Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? Pocket politics with Phill and Cam. Why are we doing this?
I think it's gonna matter.
The only thing they want to talk about is guns and abortion.
My own views, I want to see the Republicans get away from the social issues.
I'm not saying that Republicans are idiots.
You hear something like that, it's powerful.
As an American, I was disgusted.
You could make the argument that you're probably more in the middle as well.
I think that's just a story that somebody's telling you.
Again, well, with the facts, this is true. Everybody knows
What
it.
facts?
So-
What facts? Who does this hurt more, Republicans or Democrats?
Boy, I've been thinking about that. Why now? Why are you suddenly on board with this?
Pocket Politics with Phill. What's up, and welcome back to Pocket Politics. Cameron, how are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So this week, eventful week, we had a special master appointed in the the case to look over the documents illegally held by President Trump.
We're going to talk some about some border issues and what some governors are doing about it, taking matters into their own hands, if you will.
And Lindsey Graham's announcement about his total abortion ban.
You mean his bombshell?
Yeah, his bombshell this week.
And then also, can't forget about Mike Lindell in the news.
Absolutely, he had an interesting week. As well as, guess what's coming back? The January 6th committee.
Yeah, that they are. And then we've got some primary news coming out of New Hampshire and Rhode Island.
And we'll talk a little bit about the North Carolina Senate race. And let's get right into it.
All right, let's go. Let's hear about this special master, Phil.
Yeah, so they, that judge, that semi-controversial judge, Judge Cannon, that basically allowed them to have a special master in the first place, which a lot of legal authorities are saying is not really even necessary, needed, or appropriate in this case. She did end up appointing a special master, so the Justice Department gave 2 candidates, and the Trump team gave 2 candidates. Interestingly enough, one of the Trump team's candidates was picked. That's a guy named Raymond Dearie, who is a judge in the federal circuit in New York.
Yeah.
He's got a real big history. I mean, he's done a lot of things, and he's widely accepted as probably the perfect candidate.
Okay. I mean, he's certainly got experience. He was appointed by Ronald Reagan. So, I mean, this guy's got a lot of experience in the judicial system.
Absolutely. And, he also sat for a while on a foreign intelligence, at a foreign intelligence court. So he is familiar with documents that are highly sensitive and issues related to national intelligence and national security, which is probably not the best move. Now, with that being said, the other person that the Trump team put forth was not even a lawyer. Did you know that?
That's crazy. That is crazy, actually. It's interesting, though, with this Raymond Dearie, the DOJ accepted him. The Department of Justice accepted him. I mean, it came about quicker than you and I thought. I mean, you and I I guess it was the last episode we were talking where we thought this could take forever and a day if they were ever even able to find someone with the qualifications to do this. Sure enough, they did. And my understanding, Phil, is that Judge Dearie has until the end of November to finish up his review of all this.
Absolutely. Which is kind of good because it does, if he takes all of that time, it pushes it away, so it's not going to have a major effect on the elections, which, even though doesn't necessarily work in my party's favor, it is probably the better option, right? To kind of get this through and then deal with it after the election cycle.
And I'll just say I can't imagine he would take less time than that. I would think he would need all the time. You know what I mean? I would think he would need a lot of time to do all this.
Well, I know like a lot of time judges have a staff and stuff like that, but because these documents are so sensitive and because of the appointment is as a special master, I don't think he's really going to have that staff. So it's kind of just going to be him, this New York area judge, by himself reviewing 11,000 documents for the next 3 months.
That's a good point. I didn't really think about that, but yeah, based on what he has to look at, you're right. It's probably his eyes and his eyes only. Mm-hmm. And so is the end of November enough time?
Probably to get through most of it. I would imagine, just like there are some really, really sensitive stuff in there, there's probably also like the letter from Kim Jong-un that says how much he loves Trump or whatnot.
Some of it he probably barely has to look at and moves on to the next document kind of
absolutely
thing.
Yeah, but it is still a what he's got basically a 3 months to look through, or not even 3 months. He's got 2.5 months to look through 11,000 documents.
Yeah, I mean, when you really think about it, that's a lot in 2.5 months. I mean, I'm sure he's going to be a busy man. I'll say that. I doubt he's going to have a lot of spare time on his hands for the next couple of months. I mean, but yeah, I would just think, based on now we kind of talked through this scenario, I would think he probably needs every bit of that.
Yeah, and I like I said, I think this is a good choice. The Department of Justice obviously approves. Like I said, he served on that court that dealt with foreign intelligence issues, so he does have experience in this area. But who knows? I mean, he really shouldn't be doing this anyway, and it is a signal that he was appointed not by the Justice Department, but by the Trump camp.
So going back, though, to just a little bit on the timing of this, I don't know the answer to this. You maybe do, maybe don't. But I would assume if he needs more time, like let's say late November comes and he's just halfway through his work or whatever, I would assume he could ask for an extension, wouldn't you think?
I think so. But again, I don't know how that works. This is really like, I think in the legal world, we don't see that often.
Sure.
And that's why I think this is probably both of our first times ever hearing about a special master.
Yeah.
Right? Like when the Trump team initially asked for it, I thought it was a joke. I was like, what is a special master? It sounds like, it sounds like some bondage thing or something that.
Yeah, not something I'm familiar with. I mean, but then again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I mean, I'm not, I don't live in the legal world, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
something new. But speaking of legal things, how about what's going on with the border and some governors taking matters into their own hands, Phil?
Well, I think it's a little ridiculous. So, one, I think it's extremely cruel, right, for them to take these people. It's not like those migrants were in the state's jurisdiction anyway. So, and no matter where they're at, they still get processed by the federal government. So, I kind of think it's just a stunt. And it obviously didn't work out the way Ron DeSantis wanted it to work out. It kind of is a bad look.
Well, I would disagree with you on the DeSantis look. I think it played into DeSantis' hands perfectly. And I say that because he's generating a lot of interest amongst his base, and that's what he was trying to do.
Well, yeah, but he's also trying to create a situation where he's like, okay, if, rich liberals in Martha's Vineyard don't want to deal with this immigration issue, then I'll just send them the immigrants. And guess what happened when they got there? They were welcomed, and the people of Martha's Vineyard came out and gave them food and gave them places to stay.
Yeah, and then quickly got them out of there.
Well, the federal government got involved.
They're gone though. So
no, they're not. I mean, they're on an Air Force base in the area.
But they're off the Martha's Vineyard area. They're out of the Martha's. They're over on Cape Cod. So
yeah, but the point being is that those people took care of them until the federal government was able to respond.
So here's a thing though with this, right?
And keep in mind, real quick too, Massachusetts has a Republican governor. So why is DeSantis doing that to him?
Well, again, this is well thought out by Governor DeSantis. I mean, he knew what he was doing with this.
Human trafficking?
It's not, and legal people have stepped in and said this is not human trafficking. So in the case here, so Ron DeSantis sends 2 plane loads of migrants to Martha's Vineyards. The migrants themselves were in Texas, not even in Florida. But going back to that, with Texas, Governor Abbott there has been busing immigrants out of Texas for going all the way back to, April or March now, Phil? At least back into the spring at some point, I think, when Abbott started doing that. Abbott has sent busloads of migrants to Well, I know Chicago. I think Washington D.C. Where else has he sent migrants to? Do you remember off the top of your head? We're all he sent. I know
No,
Chicago. I know
but
D.C. But the point is that, and going back into this, right? We have a border issue in this country. Okay. And as far as that goes, right? I mean, we have 3 million immigrants have come into this country during the Biden. 3 million illegal immigrants have come in during the Biden administration, vice 2.4 million that came in from October of 2015 to September of 2020. And what Governor Abbott has been saying,
said illegal or legal?
Illegal.
Okay.
And what Governor Abbott has been saying, he's been asking the government for help. And President Biden has not visited the border yet. Vice President Harris has visited once. I will give her that. She has visited it. But just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, very recently, she came out and said the border is all secure. People in Texas would strongly disagree with her on that. Some residents of Eagle Pass, Texas, say they're feeling unsafe down there, saying migrants have trespassed on ranches, killed pets, stolen from businesses, and that's one town in Texas. It's happening all over there. Arizona's seeing similar things. So, I mean, there's a huge border thing going on. You know, it depends on, some news networks are reporting it, others aren't. But I've even heard Democrats, Phill, have come out and said, hey, we do have a border problem. We do need to do something here. Now, not everyone agrees with how DeSantis and Abbott are handling it.
Well, hold on.
But at the end of the day, something's got to be done down there on the border.
So first of all, we do not necessarily have a border problem. What we have is an immigration problem. And the problem with immigration is that there is no reasonable path to safe, legal immigration, right? And the other thing is like, look, no other country in the world has a wall, right? No other country in the world.
But most other countries don't let you just show up there. And you and I know that. We can't just show up in most countries and squat and make it our new home.
That's absolutely not true, right?
Most of them.
When there's a crisis in Syria, guess all those Syrian refugees roll into Europe, and they're widely considered taken care of. Okay, look.
So
a giant portion of cities around the world, like Copenhagen and cities in Norway and other places, are home to thousands of people, if not millions of people, that migrated out of Azerbaijan.
Well,
maybe
we should tell Governor Abbott to send his immigrants to Copenhagen then.
But that's not the point. What we should do is recognize that we have a giant statue in New York City that says, "Bring us you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor."
Mm-hmm. Legally,
right?
Would be fantastic.
Yeah, but here's the thing: how do they do that? They have to get into the country before they can apply for anything, right?
So again, though, we go back to fixing the immigration thing. I get it, right? And I think most people would agree with what you just said. Our policies are broken, right? Mm-hmm. But it goes back to what is, right? And I want you to just think about this for a second. If you're Governor Abbott in Texas, what are you to do right now? I mean, you have got people all over the place, or people living under bridges right now because he doesn't have facilities for them. And he's asking for help. And I think he's reached his breaking point. Hey, here you go. You guys and gals all over the country have told me about your sanctuary cities and have called me cruel and this, that, and the other. Fine. Send them on up to the sanctuary cities where they're welcome.
Yeah, but the point is they are not his to move, right? They are to be federally processed.
They're in his state.
They're supposed to be federally processed, though.
Then let the federal government help him. They're not.
Well,
and
yeah,
that's
but
what
guess
Abbott's
what?
saying.
Guess
and
what?
DeSantis
Every time
too.
we try and pass immigration legislation, it gets blocked. Like President Obama tried to pass sweeping legislation for immigration, and it got blocked.
We've had that. That's gone back and forth for years. But again, so right now, either in Arizona or Texas, right, where these governors are asking for help, that's what they're saying. Hey, President, please help us. And they feel like they are getting a cold shoulder from Biden. I think, Phill, I don't think there'd be any harm in President Biden visiting the border. And he has not done so.
I don't think there would be harm in that either, but I don't think he necessarily needs to know that there's a problem, right? And you and I both agree there's a problem. I think we agree that the problem is very different, right? Like, I think the problem is one thing, you may think it's something else. But at the end of the day, look, this country was founded on immigrants, right? this country, that's been our stance for a long time, and there's no real reason we should stop. Now, instead of buying a charter plane, can DeSantis use state funding, right? Can he help the federal government help him, or are they just making this a political stunt? One is they're taking the cruel option and just taking these people who left their homes, right, a lot of times because it's a broke, fascist country, to go make a life for themselves, and they came to the land of opportunity, right? This is the land of opportunity, and they came and they got into the country, and now they're being used as a stunt, as a political stunt.
As Governor DeSantis pointed out the other day, we're sending him to a home. We're sending him to cities that want them. These sanctuary cities. That's what he's doing.
Okay.
That's what him and Abbott have done.
Yeah, but again, the bottom line is that those people are not theirs in the first place.
I will say that I think, again, going back to kind of what we originally said, as far as DeSantis goes, this is, sure, politics all the way. He knows what he's doing. He's a shrewd politician, whether people agree with him or not. And right now, he is generating a massive amount of churn with his base. People on the right are loving this. They're eating it like candy. I am seeing memes all over social media, left and right, and it's generating interest.
Yeah, of
that's
course,
exactly,
all the bigots are coming out for this, right?
No, that's people that are on his side, right? There are a lot of people, registered Republicans in this country. Just because you are a registered Republican or you vote Republican doesn't mean you're a bigot, okay? And Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, even to an extent, these people are using it, are using it honestly to their benefit, I guess, right now from the political world. And I will say this: DeSantis and I think Abbott too are going to be players in the 2024 election. Now, I think DeSantis stands a much better shot at Abbott, but regardless, right? At the end of the day, DeSantis saw an opportunity, he seized it, and people are raving over this guy. Now, there are people that are raging over him on the other side. I get it. But that's what DeSantis wants, right? He loves to anger the liberals because that builds his base.
This didn't work like that, right? Because the people on the left aren't mad. They came out in droves,
They're
right?
Terrorizing him.
The Lincoln Project even had that video that they put out this morning that just showed the people of Martha's Vineyard coming out overwhelmingly in support, taking care of these people.
Okay, but beyond
in the short term, and again, look, he's doing that in a state where there's a Republican governor.
A very moderate one.
He's still a Republican.
I will give you that. He is a Republican. And I do believe, to be fair, he has spoken out against what Governor DeSantis did. Did he not? Charlie Baker from Massachusetts.
He did.
So, but going back to, so you talk about the folks that in up there at Martha's Vineyard welcoming them with open arms, but if you look, though, at what people on the left are saying, they are freaking out about DeSantis and about what Abbott and some of these others are doing. So I think he is angry.
None of the people. Look, I'm very much on the left. All the stuff I listen to and a lot of the social media I consume is very much on the left. People aren't freaking out about this. They're saying, look, I would disagree. This is a political stunt. That's fine. You don't want them. We will take care of them.
But they're not. They're moving them out of there.
No, they're putting them back into the federal jurisdiction where they're supposed to be. And that's that's the federal government's perspective. Like, that's the way they handle things. That's why they ended up on an Air Force base.
The mayor of Chicago had a meltdown about Abbott sending immigrants up there. The White House press secretary, certainly took some digs at these governors. I watched Maria Cardona, Democratic strategist, the other night on CNN, practically in tears over all this and she was going on about how cruel DeSantis and Abbott are, right? So I think DeSantis he's getting exactly what he wanted. He's getting his base energized. He's making the liberals upset. And he's getting, and at the end of the day, he's getting press time out of this.
I will agree that he is getting press time. All right, moving on. So this week, Lindsey Graham held a press conference to announce what, Cameron?
Well, he's got his his proposal, I should say, on a nationwide ban on abortion after 15 weeks.
Absolutely.
So,
does that include? That does not include exceptions for rape or incest, does it?
I thought it did. I'm pretty sure it did.
Okay.
Because I'm chuckling over here because as if abortion hasn't been in the news enough lately, and we see, Phil, you and I talked about this a week or two ago about a number of Republicans who have been walking back positions on abortion, and it looked like, the Democrats have got the tide in their favor and this, that, and the other. And here comes Lindsey Graham. I don't even know what he's doing, Phil, do you?
I mean, he's proposing a 15-week abortion ban.
Well, okay, thank you for stating the obvious. But, I mean, from a political standpoint, does this... Okay, I should ask that. From a political standpoint, does this make any sense to you?
No. Nor does it to anybody else. I mean, one, keep in mind, Lindsey Graham has never had kids.
Nope.
Never been married.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know, dare we say... because people have talked about it. Like I've heard multiple people say that Lindsey Graham could in fact be gay.
Right, but we don't know. We don't know that.
We don't know that.
Yeah, I don't want to start that rumor, but
well, we're not starting it because I heard it, from somebody else. But
and as you just said, if Senator Graham is, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But the point being that he's never been married, never had kids, but somehow thinks he should be involved with this social issue as a old, Republican politician.
Well, sure, but the timing of it all.
Mm-hmm.
When it was just a few weeks ago that the whole country's in shock about Kansas, and then you have Blake Masters walking back his position on abortion,
and not just Blake Masters, but every single one of these, fringe right candidates has basically removed all of the talking points on abortion.
I don't know if they all have.
Maybe not every single one of them, but a lot of them, right?
Yeah, but well, okay, sure. And so we see a tie turn, and then Lindsey Graham just drops. I'm calling this his bombshell that he threw out there. And by the way, I think I didn't read the article, but I believe I saw something that said Marco Rubio's backing him on this now.
Yeah, and you've said it yourself multiple times. The Republicans need to stay away from the social issues.
I'll say it again right now. Stay away from the social issues for the Republicans.
And I'll be honest with you. If Rubio is going to side with... this could be a nail in his coffin as a politician.
And that's interesting, too, because he is in a somewhat tight Senate race down there in Florida. I haven't really checked those polls lately, but, I think Val Demings has been within 5 to 7 points of him. But I will say this, though. Lindsey Graham, he is, with his statements, he is getting some pushback. Did you find some poll numbers?
Yeah,
here?
just so we can, I can fill our listeners in. The latest poll from September 10th has Rubio up 1 point.
That's it. Yeah. Wow. Where is that? Did you look up the 538 on that?
Yeah, that's a 538. It's a Saks Media poll, and it's not rated, so I don't know. Now the last rated poll, Insider Advantage from September 5th and 6th, has Rubio up 2.
Wow,
and that's a B-rated poll, so it's got a decent rating. Usually on the scale of poll ratings, B is kind of more like a C, but...
Yeah, but, so to be fair, I'm going to just admit this right now. Well, number one, thank you for pulling those numbers up, but number two, that's a closer race than I thought. I thought it was more like a 5 to 7 point spread, so... Well, there you go. You just said it. Rubio, he might be playing with fire here. Especially if he really starts some public churn on this Lindsey Graham thing. This isn't working out well. And as I was saying a minute ago, there is some pushback from Republicans on this. Mitch McConnell basically kind of stiff-armed him on this one and said, yeah, let's leave this up to the states or something to that effect. I think it should be voted on by the states. And yet Lindsey Graham's pushing on. And I think what I've heard is that a number of pro-life groups have pushed him in this direction, wanting him to put this out. Now we should mention this. Senator Graham is not up for election this year, so he really doesn't have any kind of election thing to worry about at all. But he's got to worry about his fellow Republicans, and Mitch McConnell right now is trying his damnedest to get the Senate back on the Republican side, and he's facing obstacles left and right. Some of it has been candidate quality, like we've talked about, social issues, and then out of nowhere, one of the top Republicans in the Senate just drops this bombshell. I really just don't know what Lindsey Graham is doing.
Yeah, so a couple things here, too. Just so that people are aware, 15 weeks is still pretty early, right? Most people don't find out they're pregnant until 20 plus. So there's that. There's also another dynamic to this, right? Which is originally this whole abortion argument was, ooh, states' rights. This should not be handled, either way at the federal level. That was kind of the basis for the Supreme Court ruling, right? That
Mitch McConnell's been saying it.
Yeah, and now with Lindsey Graham out there for a nationwide, I mean, so this undoes the states' right argument.
Yeah.
It undoes,
Which, by the way, it's interesting you brought up the states' rights argument there. I had kind of touched on it earlier, too, but I believe it was just a few weeks ago Lindsey Graham was talking about this being a state's issue.
Yeah.
And now, and he does this, and that's why I'm saying I just really don't know what he's doing. And I'm not... Well, I will say this. I can't see how this helps Republicans right now. I mean, if you are a Republican out there running in a purple state or certainly a blue state, you've got to be sitting there saying, whoa, what are you doing? Beating your head on the wall like, please, man, can I get a little help here?
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, a lot of people are coming out and saying this was not a good call. The timing is weird. I mean, everything about this is weird. I've heard somebody even say Graham may be trying to sabotage something. He seems like a pretty staunch Republican, so I see that a little bit hard to believe. But, it kind of goes without saying that, it doesn't affect him personally. It doesn't affect his state all that much because it's not really much contested in the state of South Carolina.
Pretty red state.
Yeah. But either way, I doubt his constituents as a whole, if there was a referendum similar to Kansas, I doubt they would, go along with this.
No, I'm with you. Yeah,
even in just a statewide,
Well, and I brought up a few weeks ago, whatever, that there was that study done where they said, if there was a similar vote as Kansas put out there, for at least 43 states would vote to keep abortion rights, and the other 7. It would be a very, very close race. Now, I don't know where South Carolina was in that, but odds are they were in that group of 43.
Yeah.
And you bring up the timing and the move and everything. That's what's so surprising here. Lindsey Graham is not a rookie, right? He's been involved in politics for a number of years. And for him to just come out and make a move like this, like I said, I don't think this is resonating right now with many Republicans. And Phil, wouldn't this have been better if he really wanted to do this? Better for him to do it after the midterms?
Well,
maybe not politically because he'd probably still get a lot of fallout. But I mean, if you're gonna do this, would you agree the timing would have been better after the midterms?
I mean, the timing is bad, but the whole idea of him just even coming out and doing this is bad. Like I said, from multiple different angles. One, it's not very popular. 2, it's not even going to get a vote. So I don't understand why. I mean, the Democrats basically said they're not going to get a vote on one of their most important things right now, which is codifying same-sex marriage. They said they're not even going to have the time because of procedures and stuff to get a vote on that before November, which would have been probably a very good move on their part if they had, because they could have basically just held up the vote count and said, look at all these people with R's next to their name who voted against this.
Well, I mean, it certainly could have helped Democratic candidates who could have put that on their websites, right, going into the midterms and stuff, again, going into these social issues.
But so procedurally, they're not even going to get a vote on that, so there's no way Graham gets a vote on this abortion thing.
Well, but even if they did, it's not passing the Senate.
No, I agree. I mean,
I don't think there's one single Democratic senator that would vote for this if somehow this got to a vote. Do you really think there's a Democrat?
No,
I don't even think Joe Manchin would vote.
They've got 51 votes at least against it, at least, and then we're not even going to talk about. There's the possibility of Murkowski. There's the possibility of
Susan Collins.
I mean, there's probably a couple other women that maybe not publicly would say this, but when the yay or nay comes up, they
I could very easily see Murkowski and Collins voting against it. I mean, they come out and say they are pro-choice women. So
yeah, and there was a it was one of the general polls, and I didn't see the poll itself, but I read this that there was a Democratic strategist basically that had information on this generic poll that said that they would probably at least get 57 votes.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, well, 57 votes maybe for that. But, yeah, Lindsey Graham, timing bad. This is not something that seems to be popular, and your own party's bucking the system. Again, I don't know what you're doing, nor do a lot of other politicians. So,
speaking about things that are unpopular, getting your cell phone taken from you while eating a Hardee's biscuit in Minnesota.
Mankato, Minnesota at that.
Yeah.
Not far from where I grew up.
Yeah, so for those that didn't hear this week, Mike Lindell got subpoenaed by the Justice Department via the FBI. They took his cell phone. He immediately went on TV and announced it, which I don't think he's really supposed to do. Also, is that a good strategy for him, do you think, to try and make this a big deal on right-wing media?
I mean, it will. So to be fair, I mean, if you talk about the strategy, it will get him some sympathy. It will, right? I mean, he's got some people following him, but I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, going back to the bare bones of your question, good strategy for him going on right wing, TV programs and radio and such. I'll answer your question. He will generate some sympathy there.
Yeah. Now, this is tied into a case with a whole bunch of other people. You talked about the politician in Colorado that was already charged once with like tampering with voting machines.
Yeah, a woman named Tina Peters, the Mesa County, Colorado clerk.
Yep. And like what you said, 7 other people I think are tied up in this.
Well, counting Lindell, there's 7 people. So Peters and then the 7 people, Lindell, another person apparently that's caught up in this subpoena. And by the way, all this subpoena stuff goes back to, I guess, tampering with the voting, right? Or tampering with the election, essentially, out of the state of Colorado. One of the other people in there that's caught up in this is Lauren Boebert's 2020 campaign manager. Mm-hmm. She being a representative from Colorado. So some ties there to her. Yeah, I mean, the subpoena, he was authorized by a federal grand jury in Grand Junction, Colorado. He's subpoenaed to appear before the grand jury on November 3rd, I guess. So, I mean, they've got his phone. I mean, what are they going to find on Mike Lindell's phone?
Potentially a lot of bad shit. I mean,
do we want to know what's on his phone?
Well, I mean, just the fact that he was, we know for a fact he was in the White House post-election meeting with the president.
It wasn't. I'm sorry to cut you off, Phil, but wasn't he part of that December 18th meeting? Was he there that night with Mike Flynn and that whole group?
I for some reason I want to say he was, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I can't say for certain whether he was or not, but it seems like he may.
Yeah,
have
it was like the pillow guy.
The Overstock.com
guy, and
that was
and
the
Mike
guy
Flynn.
That was the guy that Pat Cipollone walked in and he's like, "Who even are you?" When he looked at the Overstock.com guy, yeah. For some reason, though, I thought Lindell was in there that night.
I think he was, but I'm not 100% sure. But either way, I mean, this has the potential to be real bad, right? Like, typically, they don't subpoena stuff like this unless they know they have a smoking gun, because in order to get the subpoena from a judge, you have to basically prove you're going to find something. Or prove that there is evidence of the such. So it just looks like another thing to go against this election denialism and trying to overturn the 2020 election.
What do you think comes of this?
Hard to tell, but I think there's, I think we'll probably hear more after this November 3rd, the hearing or whatever he has to appear, because there's always kind of leaks and things get out, and I'm sure some reporter will get a hold of something and we will find stuff out. But again, this is another one of these people that are wrapped up in this whole thing. I mean, it's like they already have Alex Jones' phone, right? Which was sent by the lawyers in the lawsuit against him, right? In the Sandy Hook denial lawsuit. It was sent directly to the January 6th committee, who then sent it to the Justice Department.
Yeah.
And obviously the January 6th committee probably knows enough to know that the Justice Department would want that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have cared to send it over. Now they've got Lindell's phone. I mean, it just gets worse and worse. But speaking of the January 6th committee...
Oh, I was just going to say one thing, though,
Okay.
before on the Mike Lindell thing. The Hardys in Mankato, Minnesota, that he was stopped at by these agents. I'm pretty sure I know exactly where that is.
Yeah.
Because as you keep hearing me say on here, I didn't grow up terribly far from Mankato, and Mr. Lindell did say that while he disagrees with what they did, he did say that the agents were wonderful people and he was fully cooperative with them.
Fantastic. Okay, well,
Sorry, now into the January 6th.
Speaking of January 6th committee, it appears they are back, right? They met not in person, but remotely.
Yeah. Yesterday is what it sounds like, yesterday being Friday.
Yep, again, we know that they have troves of new information, whether it be stuff from Alex Jones' cell phone. There's been other people that have been subpoenaed. So we know there is probably going to be a bombshell at the end of this month.
Yeah, from what I understand, when they met yesterday, they're just trying to lay out, I guess, their upcoming strategies as they've got. Supposedly, they want to have their findings, or at least their early findings, out before the midterm elections as much as they can get out. Supposedly another hearing. I don't know if it's going to be prime time or daytime, but supposedly one more either late this month or early October. I didn't hear if they're going to do any more, so they may just have one more actual hearing, unless you've heard if they had more planned, but I've only heard of the one.
So I know that only the one is scheduled, but I seem to remember them saying that there was the possibility of 3 more, and then maybe more to follow, because it seems like they just keep getting more information.
Well, I'm going to just guess here, probably in the next week or so, we should have a date for that hearing, especially if they're now meeting virtually. They should be able to kind of put something together, get something out. So
we already do have a date for the September one. So
what's the date on it?
I'd have to go back and look it up. But I think it's like September 26th or September 28th, something like that.
Well, then I stand corrected. I did not know there was a date. I had only heard later this month. So, okay, if there's a date, then September 26th, 27th, somewhere in that range. Phill, though, have you heard if it's prime time or not?
I have not, but I believe it is formally scheduled.
Okay, well, then stand by, I guess, because, I mean, I'm sure there's more to come from this as we transition into the fall, and as we leading up to the election. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of news on this. So, speaking of elections, though, we did have some primaries this past week.
Yeah, I mean, a couple that were kind of inconsequential. I think the biggest one is New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah. There were, just for our listeners, there was 3. There was New Hampshire, Delaware, and Rhode Island. As you mentioned, Delaware, there really wasn't much came out of that. Rhode Island, minimal that came out of that. Probably the biggest takeaway from the Rhode Island one, Governor Dan McKee, Democrat, he's been dubbed one of the most unpopular governors in the country. Probably not a tag you want on you if you're a governor, by the way. That's probably not something you want hanging on to you. But,
yeah.
But McKee did win his primary. So he was going up against a couple of other candidates, Nellie Gorbea and a lady named Helena Folks. This was close. So McKee only landed 32.8% of the vote, whereas 29.9% to Folks and 26.2% to Gorbea. I mean, this was really close. McKee barely squeaked by on this one. And also, he did not do a full term as governor. When Gina Raimondo, the previous governor of Rhode Island, was tapped by the Biden administration to come into a cabinet position, McKee moved into the governor spot. Like I said, he's taken some heat back and forth, but he did survive his primary. He's now going to move on and face a Republican challenger who also prevailed the other night. That is Ashley Callis. She's polling at a mere 25% in a head-to-head matchup with McKee. McKee is going to run away with this. Rhode Island's a blue state. I don't even think this is something we probably talk about anymore because I think it's pretty safe.
Yeah.
McKee's going to be the governor or stay the governor of Rhode Island.
Looks like it. However, in the very flip-floppy state of New Hampshire, the
very purple state, yeah,
very purple. Some would even still kind of consider it like somewhat red. You know, it's that's a hard line to draw, but
I was going to say, Phil, though, they like moderate candidates up there. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, they seem to favor moderate candidates. But I have a feeling you're going to tell us about someone here that may not be so moderate.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about it, I think, on the last regular episode. But this guy Don Bolduc actually won. The other candidate came out like that night and conceded, so it wasn't necessarily all that close, or it didn't drag on.
Yeah, it didn't drag on. I think Chuck Morris, who he was running against, I think just came out and said, "Hey, enough." I mean, I thought it was fairly close, but yeah, I'll let you continue.
Yeah. So, but this guy, so again, retired military. We can say what we want about that, but more importantly, is against all abortions, right? Has said that publicly. He was formerly an election denier, but basically since winning has basically said, oh no, now my stance on it is that the election was free and fair.
Yeah, he just came out with this the other day. He had a conference about it.
Yeah, all kinds of other things. He said a number of pretty absurd and terrible things. He thinks the military should have more of a role in governing. Which, even as a career military member, I don't think that's neither wanted or warranted. I don't think. I mean, there's clearly a separation of powers for a reason. I don't. Do you think the military should be in the in the lawmaking and governing business?
I'm not interested in that. Didn't Mr. Bolduc also say that? The New Hampshire governor was a Chinese communist sympathizer. The New Hampshire governor being a Republican.
Yes, absolutely. That his Republican governor is a Chinese communist, Xi Jinping sympathizer. So this guy is off the spectrum. But now it looks like, just like a lot of other Republican politicians, he is completely washing his platform of all these controversial things. Now, we talked about this last week. He has raised very little money, and he doesn't have a lot of popularity. However, it looks like the big Republican, some big Republicans around the country are going to get involved in this race because they saw it as a very winnable race.
You talk about the money he's raised, though. I mean, he hasn't raised much at all. The figures I've got shows Don Bolduc has raised $600,000. That's it.
Yeah.
His competitor has raised $31 million.
Yeah,
I mean, that is a drop in the bucket for somebody going in a Senate race.
And a lot of people will tell you, if you want to really know who's going to win, just follow the money. Because the money dictates so much in politics. So it's definitely not a good sign.
Well, it's not, and I mean, yeah, I think also, right, he's struggled kind of before. He has run for office before in the past. It seems like I've heard him speak a little bit. It seems like he kind of struggles in front of the camera a little bit. Like maybe he's just not all that comfortable out there in front of the camera, which makes him kind of interesting, or an interesting candidate, I should say. But, I said it a little bit ago, New Hampshire seems to favor moderate candidates. They don't seem to have a moderate candidate here in Mr. Bolduc, although, Phil, you talked about him kind of rearranging his website, or maybe not rearranging, but scrubbing his website of certain things, or in this case, he actually comes out and talks about it, how he's changed his stance on the 2020 election. Some of that, I will say, is politics, right? You have some of these candidates who have to say bombastic things to win their primaries, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying you have... a number of candidates who come out and have to be as bombastic as possible and say the most bizarre of things to appeal to this fringe base that is voting in the primaries. And then, once they do pass their primary, now they have to run more to the middle to try and win over independents and possibly moderate Democrats. And so in some ways, it would look like Bolduc is kind of doing that old-fashioned strategy, if you will, of all right, well now I've got my shot. Now I've got to try and moderate myself.
Yeah, I love how you say this is an old-fashioned strategy, but it's literally happening all over the country right now.
No, it is, but I mean, it's something that's gone on for years, right?
Yeah.
When these people win their primaries, then it's like, okay, now let me shift gears. I won over my party. Now let me try and go on.
Yeah, I don't think
moderate candidate.
I've ever seen a time before that I can recall, at least, where people won primaries on denying that the election was, or saying that the election was fraudulent.
Well, I was just saying though, as far as like the moderating positions,
I understand.
We are seeing a little bit of that there. Again, we saw some of it with Blake Masters, etc. But as far as the race itself goes, all right. Fine. Don Bolduc has now secured his spot, and he's on the ticket against Maggie Hassan. She leads him by 11 points. Does Don Bolduc have a shot up there, Phil?
It's I would say no. I think just by the sheer money that Hassan has, the advantage in the money,
and she's the incumbent,
and she's the incumbent, and New Hampshire is very much purple. And I think that he's already gotten his name out there for enough negative stuff that she is going to use some of that money to run that right into the ground.
And I think she's known, I think Senator Hassan's known as more of a moderate Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. And so someone that may appeal kind of more to the broad voter spectrum up there in New Hampshire. But already down by 11. I mean, that's a steep hill for Bolduc to overcome.
Yeah, look, we've talked about 6 points being a lot between now and November. Yeah. 11 is
that's a mountain.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty steep. So, and he doesn't have much time to raise the money to buy a bunch of ads, and he doesn't have the time to do all this other stuff. So,
now you did though talk a little bit ago about how Mitch McConnell and some other Republicans are looking at pouring some money into there and trying to get some momentum going for him. So that could help him a little bit.
Yeah, but it also doesn't help that they put somebody completely incompetent in charge of the Republican financial. The state of Republican finances, and he basically, Rick Scott basically screwed it all up, right, and lost a ton of money.
I guess I don't know that Rick Scott lost a ton of money on it, but
yeah, so he mismanaged it, and there was a whole bunch of money, and it basically is semi defunct. Well, and they can't afford to get involved in a lot of these races. So it's having to come out of personal politicians, bankroll.
Or they still have plenty of money. I mean, they're dumping money into several states right now. I'm confident they'll put money up there in New Hampshire. I just don't know that it's gonna pay out for them.
Yeah, but it's looking like. I mean, that's why Mitch McConnell is personally putting money into it, right? So, I mean, Republican politicians, when they're having to give up their personal coffers and funds out of that in these races, that's a bad sign, right? Now, with that being said, I don't think he has a chance of winning, regardless of the money they put into it. But as uninteresting as that race looks to be, there are interesting races that we want to talk about this week, right?
There's one more up in New Hampshire I was just going to point out, too. Carolyn Leavitt, she won her primary as a Republican for a House of Representatives seat, possibly. Again, she won her primary. She's a big Trump supporter, but she's also stands a shot at being one of, not the only, but one of the first Gen Zers into politics. Now, I say one of because you brought up someone in Florida here a few weeks ago that was also a young Gen Z person who I believe won their primary. But this woman is only 25 years old, so she possibly could. She's a hardcore Trump supporter, but she did win her primary up there as well. So another race to watch it up there in New Hampshire.
Okay. With that being said, if it does not make the Politico election dashboard or the 538 poll dashboard, I don't know that it's going to be that. It's that many people are paying that much attention to it.
No, but I mean, it did make the news the other night that she had won her primary. She's also been in the news some about stuff she said and being a big Trump supporter and some of this other stuff. I think going along with the election denier type things. But regardless, you talked about some competitive races. I want to shift down to the state of North Carolina a little bit here, Phil.
All right,
and talk.
Battle of Beasley and Bud.
That it is, the battle of the two Bs. North Carolina's been a red state for years, but I think we've seen it go definitely more purple here in the last few election cycles. And so, yeah, Bob Budd running against North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Sherry Beasley. Now, Cook Political Report has this one as leaning Republican. But, when I looked at the 538 poll averages, it shows Beasley barely leading this thing. And, we're talking 44.6% to 44.1%. Again, this is incredibly tight. Now, that is averaging up a number of polls. Phill, though, I think you and I were looking at some polls that showed Budd with a bit of a lead. Did we not?
So the latest poll, one of them is kind of low rated. It's a B/C rated poll from East Carolina University that has Budd up by 3. Again, Budd being the Republican.
Yep.
The Trafalgar poll, which again, Trafalgar is a right-leaning Republican. But it's high rated. It has Budd up by 3. Now the polling averages though still have Beasley leading, but by a very small margin.
Oh yeah,
so
tiny.
this when I talked about if it's not on either the dashboards, on the websites 538 and Politico, if it's not on there, it doesn't gain much attention from me. This is the first one on on both of them. So literally, if you pull up the polling dashboard on 538, it is literally the first poll that you can click on. So this may be the most contested race.
It may. I mean, do you dare want to make a prediction on it?
Nope. I'm staying out of this one. This one could go either way. Yeah. If I have to make a prediction, I think Budd wins. Polls historically have not held up to what they typically do. And with a couple of recent polls showing Budd up by 3 points, I think that holds. I just don't see Beasley overcoming kind of the ground she's got to overcome.
And I think former President Trump, is going to be down in North Carolina very soon doing some campaigning for Mr. Budd. He may have already been there for that matter, but it sounds like the Republicans are going to kind of circle the wagon here and come in and go hard and strong for Budd. I have a feeling there'll be a lot of money funneled in there into this one to try and hold the seat. Again, this is these are two fresh candidates fighting for a seat that was Republican held in North Carolina. I do think it's a race, though, that Democrats feel they have a shot at. I think they're ready to dump money, or I'm sure they've already dumped money in, but certainly ready to continue dumping money in because I think they feel like Beasley can be competitive, and we see her competitive, at least in the polls. So I think this is a race that the Democrats are excited about as well. And I think it's a race that, the Republicans may be a little nervous about with Beasley polling so well, or as, good as she has. So I would hesitate to really make a call here either. I guess if I had to, I would go along with what you said earlier and go with Budd just because he seems to be trending a little bit up in the polls. And I'll just go back to, I think, North Carolina, more traditionally a red state. Although, like I said, it is trending purple the last few years.
Yeah, and you say trending up, but since June, he has lost a lot of ground.
Where was he at in June?
He was in the high 40s, so he's lost.
I'm sorry, I should say, how far ahead was he in June?
He was ahead by like 8 points in June.
So we're seeing it actually get closer now.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. I haven't followed this one probably as close as I have as some of the other ones. And it's kind of, it is...
Well, it wasn't all that close until recently.
Well, but it's just funny how we hear so much about certain states right now, right? Pennsylvania. We're hearing all kinds of stuff about the race in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we're going to get there in a second.
We're hearing all kinds of stuff about the race in Ohio. We're hearing a lot about the race in Arizona. And this is a really, really tight race that, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't see that many headlines about this one.
I think you're right. But again, with that being said, there's a pretty wide margin until, kind of the second week of August, it started to tighten up. So it hasn't, in all fairness, it hasn't been talked a lot about because it hasn't been close for all that long.
Yeah. You and I have not mentioned it at all on this podcast. Like this race, I don't think we've ever mentioned North Carolina till today.
Yeah, I don't recall specifically, but I think you're right.
I just think it's been flying under our radar.
Yeah, well, but again, it didn't look close until only for about a month does it look close. So
yeah, I thought it was actually closer than that through the summer. I guess I didn't realize Bud was up by that much back in earlier in the year. But wow, I mean, this is going to be one to really, really keep an eye on as we go forward.
Absolutely,
this is one that I don't think is going to fall off the radar now. I think people are going to keep a close eye on this one, and I have a feeling we will probably talk about it more between now and the or I shouldn't say end of the year, but rather the upcoming November midterm election. And speaking of Senate races, Phil, do you have some news out of Ohio?
Well, there is news out of Ohio. This is kind of a crazy one because J.D. Vance is getting a lot of... he's gaining some ground in Ohio. So, I believe him and former President Trump are actually speaking as we speak at a rally, which you mentioned earlier happens to be the same time as the Ohio State football game.
Yeah, Tim Ryan was seizing the opportunity on that to blast him for that.
Yeah, and then there's some pretty solid polling of recent that shows J.D. Vance up by 3 or 4 points.
Yeah, I've been seeing that number 4 floating around here recently. Is Vance up by 4, Vance up by 4, Vance up by 4. The Ohio being a fairly red state, certainly gone red the last few years, or more red the last few years. I just think the Republicans should be up more in this race. But as you've heard me say, I think to his credit, Tim Ryan's run a good campaign there.
It's a good campaign, but it's also kind of an old school campaign. Tim Ryan is not, he's definitely not the type of messenger like they have in Pennsylvania races, right? He's not quite as good at using some of those tactics. And again, J.D. Vance is kind of, walking back some of his extreme stances and extreme takes on things.
Did he walk back something on the abortion thing recently?
I believe he did, but more importantly, could this race get tanked by Lindsey Graham's announcement this week? We don't know. We have yet to see data on that.
Tim Ryan may be like jumping up and down cheerleading the Lindsey Graham announcement.
But this is another race where Tim Ryan's success is going to be driven, or lack thereof, is going to be driven by his ability to highlight J.D. Vance, what he has done in the past.
Candidate quality, if you will.
Exactly. And so that is basically the path to a win or a loss. But it does look like he is slipping quite a bit.
So, I was talking earlier about Ryan's campaign, though. And again, I've said it before, but I'll credit the man. And he's been on, I think, any news channel that'll have him, he goes on there. I know he's been going on Fox News, various programs there, and saying, hey, you know what, if you'll have me on, I'll come on. Because that might be a chance I can reach some people that I haven't had a chance to reach before. I think you said he's running an old-fashioned campaign. I think he is, right? I think he's going around door to door. I think he is one of these guys that's out there shaking hands with people and getting to know his constituents, if you will. I think watching him, I think he has a pretty good ability to connect with his voters in Ohio. He's from the state, and, it seems like a lot of people like him there. And I don't, I know J.D. Vance is pulling ahead, but I don't know if I'd count Tim Ryan out of this one yet. Would you, Phil?
No, I definitely don't count him out. If you look at the polling data from this, it has flopped back and forth several times. So, I mean, a month ago, it didn't look like J.D. Vance had much of a chance. Now it does. A month before that, J.D. Vance was in the lead. I mean, this thing is all over the place.
J.D. Vance had some money troubles, I think, too, earlier this year, right? He's had some trouble, I think, with some money. But now now money's pouring into that state.
Well, this is the one where John Thiel
Yep.
is involved too.
He's putting money in. Trump's coming up there to campaign. Oh, well, he's there now, as you said earlier. But I have a feeling Trump's probably going to spend a lot of time in Ohio in the next month or two. I think the Republicans think this is a seat that they should win. I do. I think they.
Yeah,
Mitch
Trump should
McConnell,
be spending a lot of time in jail the next
well,
month or two.
but he's not going to.
I
so.
agree.
But no, I do. I think this is a seat where McConnell and the Republicans are looking at saying, hey, we should be able to take Ohio. But man, I think this is going to be a close race. And this is another one I am nervous to call. I mean, if I had to call it, I'd say J.D. Vance, because I think again, Ohio is more of a red state, so I will give the nod to Vance in that regard. But man, I think it's going to be close, and I think Tim Ryan, he's not going to go down without a fight.
Yeah, and this will probably be one that we are looking at on, because of the nature of the state, right? This is very much one that we could be still looking at on November 10th or November 11th.
Yeah, I mean, it may take a few days, to get this all counted and figure it all out.
And if it ends up being super close, I mean, this could have recounts. There could be all kinds of different things going on here.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think Ohio has the potential to be very, very close, and one where J.D. Vance, for example, if he is down, do you think he just concedes? Like, if he's down just a little bit, like if it's really close and he's sitting there, like, do you see him just conceding, just rolling over, like, take it?
No. I do not. I think that's the least possible of all of the outcomes.
I think we want to watch this one going forward.
Absolutely. With that being said, hey, I want to talk a little bit about the special episode we did this week. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, it's a little bit shorter than our normal episode, so it won't take as much time out of your day. But, I kind of got the feeling this year that after the big 20th anniversary kind of, noise that was made last year on September 11th, this year it largely went under the radar. There was no TV specials on it that I really saw. I'm sure there were some out there. I just didn't see it to the level. Last year it was like people were dropping documentaries on HBO and different services for September 11th for the 20th anniversary. And that kind of didn't really happen at all this year. And it seems that the Never Forget may have been largely forgotten about this year. So I wanted to do a special. I went out and I did 3 interviews with 3 veterans, because we are obviously a show done by 2 veterans. I interviewed 3 veterans who had different backgrounds, kind of different age groups, different demographics, and just talked to them about their thoughts and what their experience was on September 11th. And I think it came out really good, Cam. What do you think?
Oh, no, I do. I think it was nice. I think it was definitely some good work on your part. You had a good idea there. You ran with it. I thought it came together nicely. I enjoyed listening to it.
Fantastic. So if you haven't had a chance, please give us a listen to our special episode, the Remembrance for September 11th. Moving on to parting shots. What do you got this week, Cam?
Well, before that, I just want to plug our Facebook site.
Okay, yep,
and certainly our website, Phill.
Pocketpolitics.co. You can go there, and there's a link to the Facebook site on the contacts page. Also, you can go to Pocket Politics with Phill and Cam on Facebook, and get directly to the source. Like us, where we post content throughout the week, just different stories that are in the news. Stuff to look out for, and a lot of good things on there.
Sure,
well.
yeah.
And you can engage with us as well there, too.
We'd love to hear from you, and we're up on Instagram now as well, correct?
Absolutely. And you can as well link to that through pocketpolitics.co.
Okay, well, my parting shot for the week, since it is time to wrap this thing up, is about the Minnesota Vikings. They looked great in their home opener against Green Bay. I was nothing but impressed with what I saw out of them. I'm a little nervous about getting so hyped up early, because it is the Vikings and they have a potential, or they do tend to let us fans down later in the year. But hey, a nice strong opener. You're giving me hope. Let's go Vikings. Over to you, Phil.
Yeah, keep it up, right? It was an impressive showing. Who do they have tomorrow?
They've got Philadelphia coming up here on Monday night.
Could be a tough game.
Primetime game with Philadelphia Monday night.
Fantastic. So if you're gonna go football, I'll go football too. But we'll go into the college spectrum. So Kansas, the University of Kansas, the Jayhawks are not normally considered a football school. However, 2 games in, I mean, we play today against Houston, I believe, but 2 games in, we are the top of the Big 12. So fantastic showing. We beat West Virginia last week off a pick 6, and maybe we're a football school now. I don't know. Now I'm not going to get my hopes up. Typically the winter time when we roll more into basketball, it's more of our.
I have a feeling you'll stay a basketball school.
Yeah, but hey, one could have hope, right? So, but with that being said, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next week for another episode of Pocket Politics. Bye, Cam.
All right, until next time.